Hello, and welcome to Pattern of the Ages, a podcast about the Amazon Prime show, The Wheel of Time. My name is Tony, and joining me is Ryan.
Hey, glad to be back.
Today, we will be discussing and recapping episode 3 of The Wheel of Time, titled A Place of Safety. Please note there will be spoilers for episode 3, so if you haven't watched yet, you may want to pause this and come back later. However, we will not be spoiling future episodes. We will begin the show with a recap of the episode, and afterwards, we will discuss our overall impressions. Ryan, why don't we just jump straight into the recap this time?
So, episode 3 is called A Place of Safety. And this episode was directed by Wayne Yip. And just a note, he is actually directing some of the episodes for the Amazon Prime Lord of the Rings series as well.
Oh, interesting.
So, they actually are barring directors between the two fantasy shows.
Yeah, a real company man.
Yeah. And then it's written by the Clarkson twins. I'm not familiar with them particularly, but it seems like they're another duo of writers, kind of like the Duffer Brothers for Stranger Things.
Yeah, interesting decision to go with the Clarkson twins rather than
Yeah,
like their actual names. That seems
yeah.
odd, but whatever.
And they also helped create the series some because I know in the credits, the opening credits, it says developed for TV by the Clarkson twins.
Oh, yeah, I missed that. So,
But I'm not really sure what else they've written.
yeah.
I didn't look into that. But we'll just go ahead and start recapping.
Yeah, let's take us away.
Yeah, so it opens with Nynaeve. So last episode, it was revealed that she's still alive, and then we see what happened to her during the battle at the Two Rivers.
Right, so this is a flashback. So we
Yeah.
start with a flashback.
And the Trolloc is dragging her, or a Trolloc is dragging her by the braid, and kind of pulling her away, and it drags her away, and she eventually is able to, overtake him, and she gets away and hides in that pool of water in the women's circle.
Right,
The
the
area that
Trolloc,
she was,
the Trolloc
yeah.
kryptonite.
Yeah, so the Trolloc is kind of hunting her, and she gets the one up on him, and she's able to take him down by hiding in the water.
Right.
And she kills the Trolloc. And one thing I noted, I don't know if you saw it, but when the Trolloc dies, the blood comes up in the water, and the symbol that the blood makes is the Aes Sedai symbol.
Yeah, I missed that. I missed
Yeah.
that totally.
So the symbol for the Aes Sedai is like a half of a yin yang.
Okay. Like almost like a teardrop
Right.
kind of half circle teardrop sort of thing.
Yeah. So that's the Aes Sedai symbol, and then the other half of the symbol is the male half, which they call the dragon fang. So
Okay, so that's got to be some foreshadowing about Nynaeve
yeah,
being Aes Sedai or Aes Sedai adjacent somehow.
yeah. And I saw
Interesting.
some people online were saying that a few of the other episodes had symbols like that hidden in the scenery, but that's the only one I caught.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've caught zero, so
Yeah.
you're one up on me for sure.
So I think someone said like something with the sheep that Rand had in episode 1 or something made a symbol.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not sure.
yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah.
That went
So
completely over my head.
yeah, well, you wouldn't know. Like it's just blood to you. So
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Okay, so that's our flashbacks opening, and then we go into the credits, I think, and then we come out of the credits with Nynaeve and Lan.
Yeah, and Lan is pretty much saying like, "How did you find us?" And Nynaeve says, "Well, I tracked you," and she really wants to know where the children are. So she kind of has this protection kind of sense over them, and so she's threatening Lan if he doesn't tell her where they are. But
Right.
Lan ends up knocking her out.
Yeah, they have a little bit of a struggle, and he
Yeah,
knocks her out. And right before he knocks her out, he has a really nice line. He says, "Oh, you actually tried to kill me," and then
yeah.
he outmaneuvers her and then knocks her out. So yeah,
So it goes to show what she's willing to do to
yeah.
protect these kids.
Yeah, true, true. Okay, so in the next scene we have Matt with one T and Rand
Hmm.
talking about Moraine, right?
Yeah, so we get the sense that um, Matt doesn't really trust Moraine, and he doesn't want to follow her. Now that they're separated, he just wants to go off on his own. and do his own thing, you know. But
like
Rand,
like a rogue, like a rogue
yeah,
always wants to do, of course, right?
but Rand, I mean, so last episode we had Rand's blow up with Moraine, where he pretty much yelled at her and said like, "Why aren't you telling us more?" kind of thing. But in this episode, he says, "Well, he's going to find Moraine because that's where Egwene would go, and he loves her still." So
Right. Yeah.
that's where the difference is between Matt and Rand at this point.
Yeah. There, I like that coupling. Like I like Rand and Matt with one T being
Yeah.
together because they're kind of two not they're well they're they get along, you know, they obviously are friends and they get along, but they're very different and they're kind
Yeah.
of an odd couple sort of
Hmm.
pairing. So I like that. I think it could make for some
Yeah.
pretty
And
good
well, as we
scenes.
see in this episode.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so in the next scene drives me crazy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
this scene and then I'll tell you why I hate it.
So we're back to Perrin and Egwene now.
Right. So yeah, it's important to note that this is the first episode where we're kind of switching
Yeah.
narratives, like we're switching between characters. So, you know, we have um Egwene and Perrin are in one location and Matt and Rand are in another location and Nynaeve and Lan and are in another location.
Hmm.
So as these scenes kind of as the scenes progress, we're switching location. We're not just, you know,
Yep.
they're not all traveling together. So this gave the episode a real different feel.
Hmm. And so Perrin's sort of trying to take care of Egwene, and he's trying to start a fire at like the camp that they've set up so that they can have some sort of shelter for the night.
Yeah.
And he's not very successful.
Yeah.
And so we see that Egwene sort of channels, uses the one power, and starts the fire to help him. Which um, I don't think, does he notice that she did it, or does he think that he did it? I can't remember.
Right. Well, I think that's the question. Like he
Yeah,
doesn't do it, she does it. And
yeah,
he
but does he
asks her,
notice?
like, yeah, I think he knows he didn't do it.
Yeah,
And he's
so
just asking her like to confirm that he didn't do it. Yeah. Because but they start the fire, right? Because they're running from the wolves.
right,
Is
because
that
they hear
right?
the wolves in the distance.
Yeah, and the dialogue goes something like this: "Hurry, we need to start the fire because the fire will keep the wolves away." What kind of logic is it's not dark, like it's not nighttime. It's like at best it's like early dusk. Like it's not like I don't understand this train of thought at all that they're going to start a fire and that's going to keep away a pack of wolves. And I mean, but if you think that through, it doesn't even make sense because you only have so much firewood. Like you can only keep the fire. So if you
Yeah.
stop and build a fire and the wolves somehow, you know, it keeps the wolves away. Let's say that it does. Eventually, you're going to run out of wood. And then what? Now, like the wolves have caught up to you, potentially surrounded you. Like, what's
Hmm.
the next step? Like, it's a terrible. It's a
So I'm
terrible.
sensing a pattern that you're frustrated with Perrin's storyline.
Yeah, I guess so. I just don't understand. Like, there's other. Well, it's not. Yeah, I mean, it's really my gripe is with the writers. Like, why couldn't they? I understand that they need to give those characters a scene, right? So that they can
Yeah.
progress their storyline. But why, of all the choices available, why have them stop to build a fire? Like they could have done other things to elude
Hmm.
the wolves or to give them some time, give them a respite from having to flee the wolves. It just is weird that they focused on building a fire instead of finding a shelter or crossing a stream
Yeah.
in or any number of things they could have chosen to do, but instead they went with this fire
Yeah.
plot and
I could see
it's
like,
weird.
I could see the reasoning. Like I guess wolves are afraid of fire. Um, and like
Yeah.
not
Okay.
in actual fiction, but like in reality. So
Right. I mean, there's truth to, I get that. There's like there's truth to this tactic, but is that what
mhm.
you would do if you were running? Like if
Yeah,
you put
no.
yourself in that situation, is that what you would like bet
Yeah.
everything on? Like we're gonna stop and build a fire and then hope for the best. Like it just seems
Yeah, and remember,
weird.
Perrin was literally right next to the wolves, and they weren't a threat to him.
Right. So all of a sudden, yeah. So all of a sudden, A, they're still pursuing them, and B, he's scared of them. Although, why?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so we have that scene, and
Hmm.
and so they talk about what they should do, and Perrin knows that Rand will go where Egwin goes, so they are also going to try to find
Yes.
Moraine.
So they're
So
all
everybody's going to
moving,
converge on. Everyone's going to converge on Moraine because they all think,
or that's
I
their goal
guess,
at least.
yeah, yeah, right. That's the goal.
Yeah. So then the next scene, um, we see that Lan has Nynaeve tied up and gagged to a
Yeah,
tree.
I love that. Yeah, they just open
Which,
right on that.
yeah, but eventually he does take out the gag, and they're talking, and she says that she can actually use her wisdom powers to heal Moraine.
Right,
But she says that it's going to hurt her, and since the Aes Sedai and the Warders have a bond, he'll feel what she feels.
right,
So I think this is because in episode 1 I told you that Lan is her warder,
right. Yeah, yeah.
but
That's
this is the
mentioned.
first time they actually state that outright, that they're a warder and they share a special bond, that he's
Right.
her warder.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
we
it's
kind of,
alluded to in earlier episodes, but
yeah, but this is
I
the
guess
first
you're
time
right.
it's
It's never.
stated outright.
Yeah, you're right.
So
So yeah, so she goes around and collects some herbs and whatnot, flowers, flower petals and whatnot. And so she's making a poultice to put on Moraine to help the healer or to at least like lessen the infection or
yeah,
to fight the infection or whatever. And
basically
so she pushes it,
antibiotics or
yeah, like a primitive way of trying to get rid of an infection or whatever, to fight an infection. So she pushes it into the wound and like a bunch of pus comes out or whatever. And she's warning Lan that
yeah.
that it's going to hurt. Although Lan doesn't have much of a reaction. So I'm not sure what all the hubbub was about.
I think he grimaces a little, doesn't he?
Yeah, but come on. Like if someone's like, this is really going to hurt, brace yourself. And then you just kind of
Yeah,
wince. Like, I'm
I
not
think it was
sure.
more exposition to let you
Yeah,
know the bond.
you're
So
exactly right. You're exactly right. Okay, so then we switch back to Perrin.
mhm.
And Perrin is having it's another dream sequence involving Perrin.
Yeah,
And he sees that masked figure that we saw in the previous episode in Rand's dream, like the
yeah,
red-eyed, red mouth. I think even the mouth glows
yeah. The
red.
eyes and the mouth are glowing.
Yeah, yeah. And then
Mask.
yeah, it's crazy. It's a really striking visual. So he's
Hmm.
in the dream and he sees the masked figure. And then what else? What else are we shown there?
Yeah. So it turns out that his dream is in the forge at the Two Rivers.
Right, another flashback,
Yeah, in
essentially.
dream flashback,
Yeah,
and it's where he kills his wife, and in the dream, his wife, um, basically is attacking him, right? So, and the
yeah,
wolf is eating her body.
yeah, like eating her intestines or whatever. And then she moves her head and looks at him,
Yeah.
which is eerie.
So he's sort of
Yeah,
going through the grief still, I
yeah,
think.
I guess so. Yeah,
Um, but we still have that connection with Perrin and the wolves, and
right.
now it's in his dream.
Yeah. So Perrin has the dream with the masked man, masked entity with the red features, and then he sees the wolf eating his wife, and then he wakes up and he and Egwin are still being chased by the wolves. Like
Yeah.
they wake up in a panic. Like she wakes him up in a panic saying the
Which,
wolves are closing in or whatever. We need to run. So I'm
did you
gonna
notice if their fire was out in that scene? Because I didn't think about it until you mentioned
I think it was
it.
yeah,
So
but
maybe that's why they finally showed up.
yeah, it's whatever. I'm not gonna nitpick at it, but so they're being chased by the wolves and they have to leave and say that they start to panic and they make preparations to leave.
Yeah.
And then we switch to the next scene, which
Yeah.
involves Rand and Matt with one T.
Yeah. So they find the settlement. And I can't remember if they said the name of the city in the episode.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I'm not sure
Yeah.
it's important either way.
But they see when they're coming into the city on the edge of the town, they see these men in cages, sort of like a punishment.
Like hanging.
Yeah, and that will come back later. But they find an inn, or sort of like an inn bar type tavern,
Yeah, exactly.
and they sit down and they see that a gleeman is playing.
Is Gleeman
So
like a term for this series?
I think so.
Okay, because I would just call him a bard. Like they picked up a bard.
Yeah,
You know
so
what I mean?
the
Bards, rogues, like we have all, you know, we have all the of the
yeah,
fantasy characters assembling here.
so a gleeman's like it's a traveling storyteller and musician.
Yeah.
That's what the glossary says. So
Okay.
they're basically like a jester that travels around.
Yeah. I mean, there's the bard. Like that's what else is a bard but like a
Yeah,
storytelling
which I
musician.
think we have all the archetypes. Like we have the rogue, we have the bard now, so we
We have
have
the
the mage.
magic. Yeah, mage. Yeah. Anyway, that's fine. That's fine. That what well, you know, that's expected.
and he has so the gleeman has his scene where he sings a song, and they give him a moment, like it's a pretty lengthy song.
Yeah. This scene was really, I not to interrupt you, but this scene was super cringe. I thought like the
I was
way
wondering
that,
if you were going to say that because of the
yeah.
last.
Well, this one was even worse because they really gave him a big entrance, like the way the camera focused on his feet as he
Yeah,
walked up to the stool or whatever on the stage and kind of
yeah.
pans back to kind of reveal him in a kind of sinister
Well,
look or
I
whatever, and then he starts singing so dramatically. I'm like, man, they're really giving him like the big entrance.
I wonder if that was something for the fans of the book, because I think Tom is kind of like, well, we find out his name's Tom later, but I think he's kind of like a fan favorite type character.
Okay.
So
Tom the Bard.
yeah, I think that they were like playing it up because by episode 3, people are probably wondering where he is. So if you're a fan of the books and you're like, oh, okay,
But still, it was pretty cringe.
But for you,
Anyway,
it's like,
yeah.
okay, who is this guy?
Great. He's gonna play a song. I mean,
And I'm pretty sure he's probably a musician in real life too, because of the way that he sang and everything.
yeah, it seemed like he was, I don't know. I guess he was doing the singing. I'm not sure he was doing the guitar playing. It looks pretty convincing though. I would say that. I play a little bit. So I often pay attention to when people are performing. I'm like, are they making real chords? He was making real chords, but I'm still not sure he was playing, but it doesn't matter. Who cares? Okay. So Tom the Bard plays his song, and then he basically starts working the room for money, like donations.
Because that's the thing is like, the Gleeman does all this service or whatever to the random taverns, but he expects payment for the entertainment.
Right.
So I think Rand gives some coins, but Matt doesn't want to, right?
Yeah. No.
And,
yeah. A rogue never just gives money away.
And it turns out that he had taken his coin, like his purse, right?
Yeah. They kind of bumped into each other as Tom was approaching their table or leaving the stage. As Tom was leaving the stage, he kind of bumps into Matt with 1T. And I guess that's when he swiped his coin purse.
Right. And so he's like, oh, well, you don't have to donate. I already have your money.
Yeah, that's a funny scene. I mean, it's a typical like rogue gets one upped by the wily bard or whatever, and then leaves with his money and stuff. So that was an amusing scene. I did like that. I didn't find it like terribly realistic because if you think back then, if you're thinking in that kind of setting, like if someone just steals all your money and makes a big scene about it in an inn, like there's usually going to be some violence, you would think. Or if you brag about it like he is, it seems obvious. It seems to me like it was obvious to everyone else in the inn what was going on, like what they were arguing or about or discussing loudly that he had stolen. He's like waving it around like it wasn't.
Yeah, I think that the other people just don't care.
I guess, yeah.
And they already gave their money, like it's a tradition or whatever, custom.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll leave that alone. So he stole his money and then he kind of leaves, right? And then Matt and Rand, they have a disagreement.
Yeah, so it's back to the same thing that we talked about before. Right. Matt doesn't really want to find Moraine. and their disagreement comes to basically Matt telling off Rand and saying that he's only doing it because he loves Egwin, right?
Yeah.
And that she wouldn't look for him if it was the other way around.
Right. That's the kind of the dagger to the heart, or
Yeah,
attempted anyway. Yeah.
but and they kind of decide that, and since they already lost some money, that they want to ask the barmaid if they can work instead of paying for a room.
Right. They had already kind of cried poor earlier, right? Where
Yeah,
the barmaid tried to give them some ale and they were like, we can't have the ale. We barely have enough money
yeah,
for food. So they got like some stew or whatever food. And so they were already from the very beginning saying, we don't have a lot of money. We can't afford drink or whatever. And so then Matt loses his money. And so now
yeah,
they're really in a bad way. We are to assume they're in a bad way. And so Matt has a conversation with the barmaid, and he says that he'll do, that he's a rogue, basically
yeah,
says I'm a rogue. And so I'll do whatever I need to do to get ahead. And I don't really care
yeah.
about,
And he's lying about where he's from. I can't remember the city, but
yeah,
like, and it might have been Barrelon or something.
yeah,
And even when Matt and Rand are talking, he's only interested in stuff like the barmaid. Like he keeps staring at her, and Rand teases her, like, "Isn't she a little bit old for you?" Stuff like that,
yeah, right.
or a bit
As it,
younger than Moraine. He said,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Funny.
"Yeah,
So the next scene is with Egwin and Perrin,
yeah,
and they run into a group of people. They're just like, okay, so they run away from the wolves,
yeah."
and then we have the scene in the inn, and then we come back to Egwin and Perrin, and now they've escaped the wolves
Hmm. They're
somehow.
in the woods again.
Yeah, they're back in the woods. The wolves don't seem to be an immediate problem anymore. It's weird. The wolves just kind of show up when they need like they need something to motivate those characters. So the wolves
Hmm.
are gone now, and they come upon a group of people traveling in the
Yeah,
opposite direction, basically.
and they make
And
it very ominous. Their entrance.
yeah, and it's probably interesting to note that this group are all dressed much differently than all the other characters we've seen. Like this
Hmm.
group is dressed much more colorfully. Like they have like reds and greens and white, like white clothing, like bright white.
Hmm.
I mean, there's the white cloaks, but we're gonna ignore that for a minute. But they're like, the point being they're like brightly, their dress is way more colorful and bright, which I noticed right away.
Yeah,
Are
and
these
they're called the Tuathans,
Tuathans? Yeah, or the Tink, right? They say that they're
Tinkers.
tinkers. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
and the
So
leader
tinkers are
is.
usually, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
So reading other like fantasy novels,
Mhm.
tinkers are usually like synonymous with like traveling, like groups of traveling people that go
Mhm.
from town to town to sell
Yeah,
their wares or put on performances
they're
in,
basically nomads.
yeah, in expectation of like being paid for it. So
Yeah.
really not that different from like, I guess we already saw like Patton Fane, like he's also a travel, seems to be like
Hmm.
some kind of tinker but he seems to be on his own. Like he doesn't seem to be
Yeah,
part of a group or whatever.
I
But
think the difference between Pat and Fane and these people is that the Tuathans have like their own um, kind of like philosophy. So when you join them, you sort of joining their religion.
oh, okay. Or their
So
like way of life or whatever, like that
yeah,
they're, yeah, that it's
because
definitely like a conscious choice, like they choose that
yeah,
lifestyle.
whereas Pat and Fane is just like a guy trying to make ends meet. They're more of like a philosophy.
Yeah, they're dedicated to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they even one of the tinkers even says like, "Oh, people say we steal kids, um, because they're often like young people, like people Rand's age or the villagers' age will leave the town to join the tinkers, and there's a stigma that they kidnap them to join."
Right. Yeah. So
Um,
it's definitely a way of life for them. Like it's a chosen
mhm.
lifestyle. So they come across them on the road and they have an exchange about, basically it boils down to, are you friend or foe? And so they both are comfortable with one another. And then the scene changes, right? And then we see
Yeah,
Matt.
one thing to note is Isla, the leader of the Tinkers.
Okay.
She's actually a pretty famous actress. I was trying to look up her name, but she was in Orphan Black. If you ever watched that,
Oh, I'm familiar with it, but I didn't watch much of it.
yeah. So she's a famous British actress.
Okay. So I
Um,
guess the maybe the takeaway there is that this is a character that's going to stick around for a while. Like,
mhm.
why cast somebody why cast a name brand actor in a role that's just going
Yeah,
to go away or whatever?
yeah. So there's,
Yeah,
I mean, for me,
interesting.
it's interesting because she's a pretty good actress in Orphan Black. It's the only thing I've seen her in, I think.
Okay. Does she play the main character in Orphan Black?
No,
Okay,
so the main character is played by Tatiana Maslany,
that's right. That sounds
and her
familiar.
mother is this actress.
Okay,
I forgot to write down her name.
got it. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, and the next scene involves Matt and the Gleeman slash Bard again, and Matt
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
he's wandered back to the man hanging in the cage, right? Because
Yeah.
he has spotted some jewels or crystals or something that are
Coins.
on this person's like belt or whatever,
Yeah.
and his idea is to cut the guy down and steal the jewelry or the gems
Yeah.
from him. Yeah.
And
But, yeah, take us through that.
yeah, so he's doing that, and the Gleeman shows up, and he basically says like he's disrespecting this man who was in the cage. And um, well, one thing to note: did you notice what Matt used to defend himself?
Was it the same knife?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. All right, interesting.
So
So he kept it.
yeah, he pulls out that knife, but they don't zoom in on it. But if you look closely, it's the same knife that was at Shadow Logoth.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so he took it with
Nice.
him,
Yeah.
and Lan said, "Don't take anything."
Took the cursed knife. What could go
Yeah,
wrong?
yeah. But so the Gleeman says that this man is a warrior, and he's part of a race of people called the Aiel. And he notes importantly that all Aiel have red hair, and that they are pretty much the strongest fighters in the world. So he's disrespecting this man by basically pillaging from the dead. Um, I guess.
Right. So, but what do you think is Tom's point though? Like, why is Tom showing up to give Matt a hard
Mhm.
time?
I think that he kind of wants to help out Matt, but he also wants to teach him a lesson. You know, he may see some of himself in him.
Some people call that stalking, menacing. But yeah,
Well,
point taken. Yeah.
I don't think he actually followed him there. I think that Tom actually came there to bury him
Oh,
himself, and
yeah.
Matt was there first.
Okay.
I think, at least based on what I took from that scene.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Um,
definitely like a legit take on that.
yeah, I mean, but he could have been following him, like you said too.
Yeah. I don't know.
Um,
I don't have strong feelings one way or the other.
but Tom says if you're going to disrespect him, you should at least bury him.
Right. And then he kind of turns his back and
Yeah,
says, like if you're going to take something, let's get it over with. I'm going to turn my back, get it over with, and then we'll bury him.
yeah.
Okay. So that happens.
Hmm.
And then we have another scene involving Rand.
Yeah, so he's with the barmaid
Yeah.
still, and he's got his room from cutting the wood.
Right. She
And
puts him up in the fancy room.
yeah, and I think her name is Dana.
Okay.
Um, and she starts going on like a tirade about the wheel of time and um, destiny and all that. So right,
Yeah.
and she sort of tries to make a move
Yeah. She
on
kind
Rand.
of, yeah, she leans in as if to kiss him, and Rand pulls away. Because
Because of Egwin.
he only has eyes for Egwin. And that then the scene kind of ends.
Mhm.
It's like they have an awkward exchange about it, and they're both apologizing to each other, so sorry for the misunderstanding or whatever. And then we cut back to Tom and Matt, and they've buried the Aiel. And then Tom introduces himself like more
Yeah.
formally.
So he says, "I'm Tom Maryland."
Yeah. And then and then Matt asks for his money back.
Mm-hmm.
And then does he get it back?
Yeah, so I couldn't tell. I told you, but I think that he
Yeah.
doesn't give it back, and he says you'll have an opportunity later or something like that.
Yeah, he doesn't get it back. I'm almost
So
sure. I don't want to go back and rewatch it, but my
yeah, I think
recollection is that he does not get it.
so he's. I mean, he's basically saying, well, you took the stuff from the dead man, so why do
Yeah,
you need this?
exactly. I don't blame him. It makes sense to me. Okay, so then the barmaid, we go back to the room with Rand and the barmaid. And she has Rand trapped in the room.
Yeah, and this
And
this
she's
scene I actually did find kind of humorous.
yeah. Well, she pulls his sword on him, right?
Yeah,
The barmaid
which
grabs Rand's sword.
which I can't remember when he took the sword from his father.
I don't think I don't think we were to know that.
Yeah, because in the books it's like a big deal. His dad gives him the sword,
Oh,
but in this he just has it because it's the same one that um, Tam fought the Trolloc with.
right. Yeah, in the big scene in episode 1.
Yeah, so somehow he took it and he's been hiding it or something.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't
Um,
think they've shown it. They definitely haven't shown it before now.
yeah, so I was a little confused about that,
Yeah.
but maybe something was cut or something. I don't know.
So she
Um,
grabs the sword and starts to threaten Rand, and then Rand tries to like break down the door to escape.
she's locked there. Someone's locked it from the other side.
Yeah, and then she says something along the lines of, "You'll never break down the door; it's too strong." And yeah, and then she through some exposition says that she basically serves the dark one. She's put in her lot with the dark one,
Yeah.
and they have a conversation where she says something along the lines of, Rand says something along the lines of why, um, like what. Why don't you tell me how that exchange goes? Do you remember it?
Yeah, she sort of says like, well, like you said, Rand says like, "What do you want from me?"
Right,
But she's sort of saying like, "I know that you could be the dragon," you know, and she's
right.
saying the Dark One doesn't want to hurt the dragon. The Dark One will help the dragon make the world a better place.
Right. So she's throwing shade on the Aes Sedai. She's saying the Aes Sedai are the bad ones. They're not.
Yeah.
You've been fooled. The Aes Sedai don't want to help you if you're the Dragon Reborn. They want to kill you if you're the Dragon Reborn. And the quote Dark One is the one who
Mhm.
wants to help you.
Yeah. So and then the door that can never be broken down ran basically unhinges, right?
Yeah, they get out of the room. Yes, yeah.
And
Go
he kicks
figure.
it
At some
or
point, they get out of the room.
he punches it so hard that it falls off the hinges.
Yeah.
So and he's fleeing from her,
Right.
right?
So they're outside of the room. The room, when we say room, it's really more of like an outhouse, like an outbuilding, like a little
Mm-hmm.
freestanding
Mm-hmm.
hut or whatever. And so they're outside of that, and she is holding the sword on Rand,
Mm-hmm.
like in a threatening way, like you're going to come, she's saying you're going to come with me. I'm going to take you to the dark. I'm going to be the one to deliver you to the Dark One so that I can get the glory of being the one who brings the Dragon Reborn to the
Mm-hmm.
Dark One. And that will afford me a certain lifestyle, right? I'll be appreciated, um, and live the rest of my life in, maybe not luxury, but like with
Yeah, because
in comfort. Yeah,
she's the
right.
one who brought the Dark One or
Right,
the
right.
dragon to the Dark One.
So she's holding him at sword point, and things are kind of the scene is beginning to climax. And then out of nowhere, a large dagger goes through her chest. and we see it
Or
kind of
was it through her
punctured.
chest or through her throat?
Yeah, like her upper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is kind of gruesome.
Yeah, it's and it was a surprising scene, and it was a heck of a throw. Because then they like pan out, the camera pans out, and we see that it's Tom, and so Tom
Yeah,
has thrown this large dagger, and killed the barmaid, and Rand kind of freaks out a little bit, and then Tom says, you know, you fool, don't you realize that she's a dark friend? What he refers to as a dark friend, and a
yeah,
dark friend is supposed to be someone who has like you know, essentially sworn to like serve the Dark One, or is, you know, a
yeah. Bas-
disciple of the Dark One.
Basically a Death Eater, if you know Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that pretty much ends that scene, and I
Hmm.
thought that was going to be the very end
Yeah,
of the
and
show. I expected that to be the final scene.
and he meets up with Matt too, right? When he's outside.
Yeah, they're together, aren't they?
So yeah, so he
Yeah.
meets up with him,
Yeah.
and then Tom saves him.
Yeah. So now we have Rand and Tom and Matt are
Yeah.
together or whatever. But that is not the final scene. The final
Hmm.
scene actually involves Moraine and Land and Nynaeve. And they are walking down the road or a path.
And
And
so at
they,
this point, Moraine is healed,
yeah, because she's like walking around. I
hmm
don't know if she's healed, right? But
but
she's
yeah.
stronger. And so, yeah, so tell us what happens.
So we see that we're reintroduced to Leandrin and her group of Aes Sedai,
Yeah, she's all in
and
red.
yeah, and
Leandrin's
carrying
always
with
been,
them
yeah.
a metal cage, and we see that there's a man inside there who is the dragon reborn that they have captured.
Yeah, so the exact exchange goes something like this, where um what's her name?
Leandrin,
Leandrin says, "Oh, Moraine, if you're here to help, you're too late." And
yeah,
Moraine is like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Oh, you didn't hear? We've already captured the one who claims
hmm
to be the Dragon Reborn." And then this like kind of cage on wheels, like a cage on a cart, comes towards, you know, the camera comes towards, and it's revealed to be like some dude with long hair who
yeah,
we're going to find more, you know, I presume we're going to find out more about him in episode 4, because that's where episode 3 ends.
yep.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of the recap. Is there anything you wanted to say about your overall impressions of the episode? Did you feel like it was um better than episode 2, just the same, or were you satisfied with how the story is unfolding?
Yeah, it's still hard for me to decide which one's my favorite, but like you said, I did like how we get some separation of the group now, and their own storyline start to develop.
Yeah, I think that's the big um kind of the triumph of this episode is the
Hmm.
writers figured out a way to break up the group and to let those have those individual storylines kind of play out. And I think that really helps the show overall. Like it breaks
Yeah,
everything up, and I think that really strengthens the show when you're not having everyone together all of the time. So I wonder how much longer they're going to keep that up, at least for some amount of time, because it seems that Moraine and Lan and Nynaeve are pretty far away from where Tom and Matt
yeah.
and Rand are. So at least they'll be separated for a while. I'm not sure about Perrin and
Egwin.
and Egwin. So I like that. I do. I really like that, because it gives you it ramps up the the intensity
Yeah.
of the show, or like the suspense of the show, because you have these 3 different storylines going on, and you're wondering like what's, you know, you're not wondering what's going to happen to this big group of people. You're wondering, well, what's going to happen over here, and what's going to happen over here, and also what's going to happen over here. So it makes the whole like vibe of the show way more tense, which
Hmm.
which I think is a positive thing.
Yeah, and um, so last episode we had the whole lore with Manetheren and Shadar Logoth, and this episode they introduced the Tuathans and the Aiel, so they continue to expand everything
Yeah,
and
and I
add.
think they're yeah, and I like the way that they're doing it in a way that seems like low stakes. Like they're introducing these characters in this lore, but if you don't like if the audience doesn't remember it, it's not it doesn't seem like it's going to hurt their enjoyment of
Mhm.
the of what's happening, you know. And I
And
feel
it's not
like
an exposition dump.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're it's I like how they're doing it. Like I'll be honest, like after the first episode, I was a little worried about the
Yeah.
show. Um, but I think watching episodes 2 and 3, like I'm very reassured
Mhm.
that this show is going to be pretty satisfying all the way through.
Yeah, so we've got 5 more episodes.
Yeah, one a week for the next 5 weeks.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm glad. I I personally enjoy that. I like it when shows do the one episode
Mhm.
a week like that because it gives you time to
Yeah.
watch and rewatch if you want to, and then to kind of digest it and then to kind of discuss it. And it just I like the breathing room that kind of schedule allows.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the other thing I was going to ask you, do you have any predictions or anything like that that you want to
Oh,
talk,
yeah, good question. Um,
or do you want to
I
just
don't.
wait?
Yeah, I don't know that I have. I didn't have any time to think about it ahead of time. I don't
Yeah.
know that I have any predictions aside from I predict that the Tinkers are going to play a bigger role in the
Mhm.
story. And I predict that Leandrin is going to play a bigger role in the story, and that Leandrin and Marine are going to butt heads, and they're going to have an adversarial relationship, which could make for some interesting points, plot developments.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, other than that, yeah,
Well, I
other than
think.
that, I don't know that I have any other predictions necessarily. What about you?
Well, I'll just.
Well, you kind of know,
Yeah.
don't you? You've read the first three
Yeah.
books, so yeah, you're cheating.
But I'll just say that I think both those things you'll find stuff out about next week as long as they keep those storylines and
Oh,
not do
cool.
something completely radical. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Why don't we end it there?